Elected plan.
Welcome to Behind the Scenes. I am your host, Hector Montalvo. This show is dedicated to asking tough questions for you, the viewers. We bring you their responses, and we let you decide. Joining us here today at our MCTV studio, candidate for the First Essex District, independent candidate, James Kelcourse.
Good evening, Mr. Montalvo.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, who is James Kelcourse?
Well, I'm a resident of Amesbury, Massachusetts, where I reside, and graduated from high school. Father of two children, Tommy, who's 9 months old, Michael, who's 3 years old, a wonderful wife, Amanda, and a great family who also resides in the surrounding area.
Great. And you got two little ones, and what made you decide to join in the First Essex Senate race?
Well, I had wanted to do politics for a long time. I've always had an interest in politics. As early on as my undergraduate studies at Villanova University. In my undergraduate studies, my roommates in college were members of the SGA, the Student Government Association. Afterwards, I attended and received an MBA from Villanova University, and I was further involved in some political discussion and debate, and it had been an interest of mine for a long time. After working in the private sector for a while, first with Fidelity Investments, afterwards in my father's business, and attending law school nights, I decided that it was time to run. I first started out as a candidate for the first district seat in Amesbury, the District 1 City Councilor seat. I lost by 18 votes. However, to a very good friend and fine City Councilor, Bob Gilday, who currently serves on the City Council with me. Then I filled a vacancy on the planning board, the elected planning board in Amesbury, where I served for a year. And I had the desire to run for an at-large seat, which I did, and I won, and then was elected to a second term just recently, which began in January of 2012.
Great. So you're not one of those June-November candidates that only appear in June and disappear in November?
No, not at all. I've thought about it for a long time. I actually considered running for state representative before. However, we have a heck of a guy up there, Mike Costello, who's become a very good help and reference, as well as the other individuals. It was sad to see Steve Baddour go. I enjoyed working with him on matters concerning Amesbury, and working together with those individuals, along with my fellow city councilors and our mayor in town. I felt that it was the right time to move on and to fill this seat that has, become open as of March 26, 2012.
Yeah. And you and Senator Baddour don't share the same barber shop or hairstylist at all, do you?
No.
Okay.
No.
Now, let me ask you, what do you see is the most important issue facing the First Essex District?
Well, I think the most important issue has always been job creation. This area, like one of the other individuals who's also running for the seat, has stated before that job creation and growth. What he stated, in other words, is that this has become this area was rich in manufacturing, and it has since dwindled. Of course, a lot of that manufacturing is now shipped overseas. We're buying products from other countries such as China, India, and we're stocking our shelves here in the local Loop stores in Methuen here with those items that were purchased from overseas. I think the most important thing is going to be creating further jobs, industry and commerce, expanding that commercial industrial base in which people can once again in the First Essex District flourish and contribute to a wonderful part of the country.
And how do you plan on doing that? How do you plan on getting jobs back into the communities?
Well, based on my background, experience, and training, Like I said to you earlier, I have a rich education in business, an undergrad from Villanova in business, a master's of business administration from the School of Commerce and Finance at Villanova University, combined with the corporate experience that I've had and also the private experience I've had. I think it's important, and again, all along throughout those stages, I have always believed, been a strong advocate of educating myself. For instance, I have 2 years of mechanical training under my belt. After leaving the finance industry and going to work in the family business, I felt that it was incumbent upon me to learn the trade in which I was, or the service in which I was going to be providing to those patrons of our business. So I enrolled in mechanical school to learn that. And I think creating jobs and creating new commerce and industry and growth is going to be reliant upon training, educating people, motivating them to learn new trades, learn new skills. I became a lawyer at age 33. I've now been practicing for a little over 4 years. So just before I was 34, when I turned 34 years old. So I retrained myself to a new profession. The sky's the limit for anybody out there. And I think what they really need is they need that motivating force to get out of unemployment and into the employment force and to contribute positively to this wonderful area of the country in which, again, we live in.
Now, twice before, the voters of the Commonwealth voted to get their taxes rolled back to 5%. Mm-hmm. The legislation in Beacon Hill basically ignored the will of the people. Mm-hmm. If you're elected to the Senate seat, what steps will you take to ensure that the will of the people are honored?
I really think the will of the people needs to be protected. And I think it really, as you said, needs to be honored. I was not a proponent of of the increase to 6.25%. I think it was not a good move by us, especially given communities such as Methuen that has Pelham and Salem, New Hampshire, just to the northwest of its border. Haverhill has also New Hampshire just across the border. Amesbury has Newburyport and Salisbury. They have those bordering communities in which New Hampshire is easily accessible, and it's obviously tax-free there. So I think that was a bad move by us. I think we should have kept it at 5%. I believe in fiscal responsibility. I think there are areas in which we can really look at and save instead of, mismanaging some funds. And I don't want to necessarily say that we're mismanaging funds because, it's such a big government and there's a lot of, there's just a lot of areas in which to really, pay attention to and be mindful of. But I think collectively we can work together to really rectify the situation and alleviate the burden of further taxation on individuals in the district and in the Commonwealth.
Let's take a look at the education portion of it. Here in the Commonwealth, and including in some of the First Essex districts, there are schools that are running underperformance. Mm-hmm. What type of accountability should be there for those that don't meet the performance standards for our children?
Well, I think it should be just like any other private industry type job. If you don't perform, then of course there are consequences, and those consequences could be, loss of job. But again, I think there should be a focus on encouragement, motivation, working together, and doing the best job that we can, especially for the kids, because we need to look at them to take care of us. We've all heard our parents and our grandparents state before that, well, we're going to have to rely upon you. Well, we're going to have to rely upon them. I'm going to have to rely upon my two boys when they get to the age, when mom and dad get to the point where, they're going to be looking to them to maybe help out. And I think it's again going to be incumbent upon us to, keep motivating, keep training, keep after folks. But getting back to the point, I think, there's got to be some accountability as well. And people just can't hold on to these positions if they're not performing. Maybe teaching just isn't the job for them. Maybe some other type of professional field is better suited for them. And that's okay too. We're in a world today in which folks change professions.
Now, The governor here in the Commonwealth just vetoed the welfare reform bill, portions of it, okay? And it had to do with the EBT. Where do you stand? Do you think he did the right thing by vetoing that EBT welfare reform?
Well, I don't know specifically, Mr. Montalvo, exactly which areas of the bill in which he did veto, and I want to look closer at that. But with respect to welfare reform, as a whole, I think that it is important that we really take a close look at that. Because again, instead of keeping people, reliant upon the system, we need to motivate them. We need to encourage them. We need to provide the education and training, the ability for them to move on and become productive members of society and the workforce. It's not good for us, as a state, as a country, as a world, to have people reliant upon a system, because eventually, if that reliance just continues to grow, where are the source of funds going to come from to continue to feed that system? It's not going to, it won't work. It's not going to be self-sustaining for too much longer.
I agree. Now, let me ask you this. Will you ever support legislation that would make the Commonwealth a right-to-work state?
I think I'd have to take a good close look at that. And I know Wisconsin, it was all over the news within the past, several months with their right-to-work issue. There was a time and place where, and there still is, and I want folks to be mindful of that. I'm not against unions. I think there's a necessity for unions, but I also think that unions need to be mindful of the world in which we're living in today. I like to talk to folks about this because I think it's very interesting that we ship products. I said to you earlier, we take products from China and India and some of these other lower cost or lower cost to produce nations, ship them all the way across the ocean and stock our shelves. The Loop Mall over here in Methuen, the stores in Haverhill, these bordering, communities in the state just to the north of us, New Hampshire. And it just doesn't make sense to, really be stringent here in our country with respect to, prevailing wage, minimum wage, unemployment, all these costs that rise the bar and ultimately rise the cost to the consumer when we're taking goods from overseas where they don't have unemployment, where they don't have minimum wage, where they don't have workers' compensation, and when a worker loses a finger, they just get cast aside. It's just not fair. We need a fair and balanced, if we're a global economy, we need to be fair and balanced. We just don't need to be fair and balanced with respect to our own country. We need to be fair and balanced with respect to all those countries worldwide.
I tell you, we have a difficult thing. Now, we see what happened with the Big Dig. It was a project that started in the 80s, and it's supposed to be completed in the 90s. It was supposed to cost us millions, and we find out now that it's in the billions of dollars. We've bailed out the MBTA up in Boston. How much debt can the state afford to take on?
I don't think the state can afford, any more debt than is reasonably necessary to maintain reasonable, necessary services here within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I think we really need to take a business-minded approach. I think we need to be fiscally responsible. I think we need to be aware that there is waste and do our very best to minimize it as best as we can. Because if we can't, we're going to get ourselves into a situation of bankruptcy or near bankruptcy where we can no longer afford to manage the affairs of the state effectively. And I think it's going to be problematic for us down the road. So, in regards to your question concerning how much more debt can we afford to sustain, I don't think we can afford to sustain any more debt. And I think we're taking responsible steps, both those in the administration now, those in both parties, to manage and offset that cost.
What would be your first reform that you would like to see, that you would like to work on if you were to be elected?
I think, again, going back to our initial discussion, expanding commerce and industry again in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, encouraging and motivating people to get back to work, not to be reliant upon the system. I think that would be my first order of business. Getting out into each and every community, visiting these unemployment centers, these jobs training centers, having discussions with peoples. I think being a legislator goes beyond just being, having your seat in a chair up there on Beacon Hill. It means getting out into each and every community, and I saw that, with the former, hopefully my predecessor, Steve Baddour. He really did do an excellent job of getting out there, meeting with the constituents, talking about them, about individual concerns. And I think it's important to carry that on and to really be a motivator to become somebody who is going to encourage that growth and job creation. And that's what I hope to achieve.
And what are you hearing from your constituents as you go door to door in this election season?
I hear a lot of different issues. Folks have numerous concerns. One of the mistakes I made in one of my, I don't think of it as a mistake, but one of my roommates from college, who's a very near dear friend of mine, who's actually an attorney down in D.C., we're roommates together at Villanova, he says, Jim, you have just, you have this ability to shoot the breeze too much. He says, you're going to knock on a door and move on. But I have a tendency, as I did last Saturday when I was canvassing the 10th precinct here in Methuen, to sit down and talk to some of these individuals. And one of the individuals was an older gentleman, and I just really enjoyed talking to him. He was going to celebrate his 67th wedding anniversary with his wife on Sunday. This past Sunday they did. But he shared the concern, and the concerns. The biggest concern I heard from him, and the concerns that I hear from so many others, are the economy. The cost of doing business in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the empty buses, the MVRTA buses that we see going back and forth. How can we remedy that? How can we lower the cost? How can we make it more palatable and manageable for people here in the Commonwealth, in the First Essex District, to live and to get by? Because, it's more and more difficult each and every day to get by. So I think that's going to be, something that's going to have to be, addressed, of course.
Now, I read a report recently that suggested that telephone poles are the leading cause of death. Do you have any plan on the Commonwealth changing the way the electric system, the pole systems work, as far as running everything overground? I mean, are we outdated, or what should we be doing to keep the electric system up and running, and the poles maybe underground and so on, so people don't crash into poles?
It's funny that you brought that issue up, because my mom is from Scotland. She moved here in the early 60s. She met my dad at Syracuse, and the rest is history. But when I go overseas, half of my family lives in the UK. And when I go overseas to visit with my family, my aunts and my uncle and my cousins and so forth, everything is underground. It's all underground utilities. I know that in the Newburyport Daily News, there was an editorial not too long ago, within the past couple of years, talking about the redevelopment of Brown Square, and how such a nice development is kind of marred by these telephone wires and telephone poles, and how we should be working to put them underground. I think it would be wise for us to look at the feasibility of doing that. But in talking to my friends who are in the utilities industry, the cost and the increase in monies to those individuals who are the recipients of the services would be just too high. But with new construction going forth, I was in Haverhill, and I noticed when I was knocking on doors a couple of weekends ago that there was a new development that was constructed, and all the utilities were placed on the ground. It was nice, but that's something that I would advocate looking for to doing, and seeing what that impact of the cost would be on the citizens, and see if it would be manageable.
Now, many people will argue that Beacon Hill has too many lawyers already serving at Beacon Hill, and basically nothing gets done, okay? Or they're voting on legislation that could potentially affect their own practice. Do you see this as being a conflict of interest?
Well, again, and as other individuals have stated before, as an attorney, I have to be very mindful of any conflict of interest issues. You know, we as attorneys, as many of those may not believe out there, are bound by ethical standards. So it would be incumbent upon me to withdraw from anything that would, of course, be a conflict of interest. But I think my education, training, and background and experience would be extremely helpful. And that's something I don't think I would, of course, I'd look at each situation differently. And specifically in those situations that there would be a conflict of interest, of course, again, withdraw. But those that I could, impart my knowledge and experience and help the better of to better the Commonwealth overall, I don't think it would at all be an issue.
Now, what about, would you be opposed to raising taxes in the first term if you're elected?
Yes, I would be certainly opposed to raising taxes. Again, I just don't think it's something that we should just arbitrarily say that's what we need to do. I think we can manage the budget we have responsibly. I think we can offer, if not all of the services, more of the services that we're currently offering to the constituents, and maintain an excellent standard with what we already have and with the taxes that we already receive. In fact, I think we should really start to look at reducing the amount of tax burden on the people of this good Commonwealth, because it's really becoming burdensome. Property taxes, cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth. As a city councilor at large in Amesbury, I'm of course aware that we derive, and many of us are of course aware that we derive the revenues in which to fund our budgets by way of property taxes. And we have to, each and every budget season, look at the best way in which to say, well, either we can offer that service or we can't offer that service. And one of the most important things that we always have to be, of course, mindful of is the schools, because as an individual with 3 degrees and a couple of credits shy of a 4th, I'm a big advocate of education. But I don't think it would be necessary to increase taxes. And no, I would not be in favor of raising any taxes. In fact, I would be in favor of really looking at reducing the amount of the burden that the citizens in the Commonwealth and the First Essex District are already faced with.
So is there a strategy that you're taking in this election? Are you starting in one particular district, city, and working your way down, or how is that operating for you?
Well, I think I received my nomination papers on or about March 29th of 2012, a few days after the former Senator Baddour stepped down and announced that he was going to be moving on to another job. And I worked in every district and gained 3 times the amount of requisite signatures to get my name on the ballot. I think when I turned them into the State House, they just stopped counting at 650, and we just needed 300. But I made it a point. There is an individual that I look up to and I respect, who is a good political leader who has been involved in this for a long time and has been very helpful to me. And they indicated to me that it was a good opportunity to get out there and get used to meeting people, getting the nomination signatures. So in doing so, I've made it a point to get out there as often as possible, to spend as much time as possible going door to door and to continuing with handouts, with flyers, with a postcard, shaking hands and meeting people, and I really enjoy it. Getting back to your original question, though, what's my strategy? I started in Methuen. Methuen, the first day I went out to collect signatures, was out in front of Home Depot in Methuen. I rounded up 2 of my buddies, 2 of my closest pals. One went in front of Market Basket, I went in front of Home Depot, and the other one went further on down from me, and we just collected as many signatures, shook hands, talked to folks, and then I moved on to Salisbury and North Andover and all the other districts. But my intent is to make a presence and continue to make a presence in each and every district throughout First Essex District.
Great. And if you don't mind taking this opportunity, looking over at this camera and talk to the constituents who will be voting for you in the November election, and let them know why they should be voting for you to be the next senator for the First Essex District?
I want to first take this opportunity to thank everybody. I'm very appreciative of all of those who have supported thus far my candidacy and continue to support my candidacy. And to all the good people out there in Methuen, Haverhill, North Andover Precincts 1 through 4, Merrimack, Salisbury, Newburyport, and Amesbury, who have taken the time to talk to me, to listen, to sit on their doorstep, discuss all the issues of concern to them. And when elected, hopefully, with your help and your support, I'd like to bring my education, training, experience, and knowledge to the state Senate and hopefully create jobs, look to get us here in this First Essex District and here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts out of this economy, back to work, expand the commercial, industrial base, and really better the environment in which we live in, and to be mindful of the concerns of all of those constituents who have really a desire to stay here, to work, to make the First Essex District and to continue to make it their home for future generations to come. I think if elected, I'll be a good representative of the people of First Essex District and do the best job that I can for them and hopefully for years to come. Thank you very much.
Great. And if anybody in the First Essex District wishes to reach out to you, help you out on the campaign trail, how do they go about doing that? Do you have a Facebook page, an email address, a phone number?
I do.
Give it out.
Folks can find me on Facebook at James Kelcourse, Kelcourse. They can also contact me at jameskelcourseforsenator@gmail.com. My telephone number is 978-388-4144. And folks, feel free to call me anytime. I welcome your ideas, your thoughts, your concerns. And that's what running for this seat is all about. It's about the people of the First Essex District. I want to be approachable. I want to be there for you. So don't hesitate to call me. Don't hesitate to email me. I live in Amesbury. I have an office, a law office in Newburyport, Massachusetts. You can find me. I'm in the book. Pick up the phone, call me. That's the best to do, or email me. And I look forward to speaking with you further about my candidacy.
And if you are elected, I must ask you this question. How open and transparent will you be with all your constituents from the First Essex District?
Extremely open and transparent, Mr. Montalvo. I think that's the most important thing. I think that's important to discuss with the people who is representing them on Beacon Hill, to be approachable, and to just discuss all the issues in an open, fair, and honest manner.
And you believe in the open government?
I do. This government is about the people. It's we the people. It's not we the government. It's, the last time I looked at the Constitution, I think the first big letters there in words were we the people. So it's very important. It's about us. It's not about anybody else or any special interests. It's about the people whose houses that I've visited and those individuals I've spoken to.
Well, we want to thank you for taking the time to come in and talk to us about your candidacy for this First Essex Senate race. We want to thank you at home for watching. You've been watching Behind the Scenes. Join us next time as we go behind the scenes to ask the tough questions, bring you their responses. We let you decide. Thank you for watching.